Yes, Rabbi said we have arrived at, to a certain extent, the culmination of everything that Rav Kook has been teaching us all year, which to a large extent is the preamble to Rav Kook's explaining the Heter Mechira. Everything that we have learned, to a certain extent, is filtering into that moment where Rav Kook explains why is he supportive of and why is he allowing for the Heter Mechira. So everything that we've learned about Yovel and everything that we've learned about Shemitah and everything that we've learned about the lofty goals of Shemitah and Yovel and Torah and the Jewish people and Eretz Yisrael as a whole, all come down, and the entirety of the beginning of Zionism and Reishis Smichas Gol Aseinu, the return of the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael, all of that comes to fruition in these last 4 pages, where, please God, we will learn Ois Ches this week and Ois Tes next week. Rav Kook explains as follows. He says, "V'hinei ata higia shnas hashmita." Now it is going to be shnas hashmita. Lefi minyan hashanim hamuchzak itanu, according to the way that we calculate the years. Now we're not going to get into the lumdus of that now, but there are machlokes between the Rambam and the Ravid, which is really the Rambam and the Gaonim, whether or not our calculations are accurate. Are we counting Yovels? Are we counting Yovels? Are we not counting Yovels? But either which way, says Rav Kook, this is a Shemitah, yeah. He says, "Meiroiv dalus matzav yishuvenu ba'aretz hechrechu omnam leistapik al piroiv b'hirasha." He says, however, as a result of the very sad and dismal state, this is almost the only time that you see Rav Kook speaking in denigrating language. So far, he's been speaking in such lofty terms. But he says, but if you take a look at what's going on the ground, 2 feet on the ground, it's tough. It's really tough. You've got all of these young Israeli farmers, proto-Israeli farmers. This is before the big influxes that would come before the Shah and after the Shah. This is a very, very weak settlement. We're talking the 19 before 1910. It was 1904, 1905. It's very weak, very, very weak. The presence of Jewish people in Eretz Yisrael is very weak. He says, we need to, in general, rely upon a temporary exemption. Temporary exemption, we need to find a leniency right now. He says, as has been accepted and decided by Gedolei Hadar prior to my arrival in Yaffo. He says, I'm not inventing anything new here. What I'm going to propose is that we continue doing what people have been doing for many years already. That dived very deeply into the reality of what this new settlement in the land of Israel is. And with a feeling of truth and integrity, they have investigated what this is and what it is going to become. With the understanding that we should not lay waste to what we have built, because right now things are small. Meaning, we should take into account that this is part of a process. What we have right now, says Rav Kook, is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of the story. It's a beginning that's so far taken like almost 2,000 years, but it's the beginning. And we shouldn't, chas v'shalom, be concerned that whatever we put into place now is therefore going to be reality forever. What we put in place now is going to be temporary. I have this conversation sometimes with a chassan and kala before they get married. So Chazal really tell us that there's no such thing as a chasana without some kind of machlekes, right? There's got to be a little bit of something, right? Something's got to go wrong a little bit. So I speak to I was speaking to Chassan and Kala last week. They're going to be getting married in a couple of weeks' time. So they were telling me that this one's parents want the flowers to be like that, and that one's parents want the flowers to be like that, and what is this going to mean for the rest of their marriage? I said, stop. You're only going to be engaged to each other once. After this, you're not going to be engaged anymore. This is a temporary period in your life. So whatever issues are going on now, don't imagine that this is necessarily indicative of the future. Whatever you have to work out now, recognize and realize that like in a couple of weeks' time, you guys are going to be like living in the same apartment together. You'll be able to have conversations without your parents overhearing you. Like it's going to be different. And in a different situation, the things that are problematic now will not be problematic any longer. And that's the point that Rav Kook is making here. He says, right now, Eretz Yisrael is very weak. The Yishuv is very weak. Shmiras Torah Mitzvahs is very weak. We're in a not great situation. However, it's temporary. We should recognize, realize, understand, comprehend in a very deep way that everything that's going on now is very much temporary. He says, but we have to know that everything that is happening now is being orchestrated by the Rebbeinu Shalom. This is not this is not because we are so good and worthy and powerful and strong. We've managed to build this into Chas v'Shalom. This is all Me'ez Hashem HaYisosos. The Rebbeinu Shalom has ensured our ability to do what we are doing, to live in a way that we are living. He says, Lasis nira la'amay al admas kodshay liyos lepetach tikva u'lutzmichas keren Yeshua. That this should be an opening. This is a window for the Jewish people in the land of Israel, a opening of hope. And the tzmichas keren Yeshua, the tzmicha, the blossoming, the blooming of the keren Yeshua, of the horn of salvation, which of course are all ramazim to what we speak about in davening all the time. Tzmichas keren leDavid avdecha, the arising of the horn of David. Now, the word keren, by the way, it's just worth pointing out, keren has two words, has two meanings in Yiddishkeit. Michelangelo got this wrong, famously, right? Keren can either mean a horn or it can mean ray of light, right? Ray of light. So, tzmichas keren leDavid avdecha. So, when I was in Kerem Yavne, my chavrus and I were thinking about this. So, remember this, that what we're davening for, tzmichas keren Yeshua. So that could mean the horn, meaning the cry of Mashiach Tzidkenu. It could also mean what the Yerushalmi says in Brachos, that the Amoraim saw Ayelas HaShachar, that the light was going kima, just a little bit at a time. Right? It was a tzmichas keren, the ray of light of Geula was expanding, was growing. So you have both of those meanings, and I mentioned that today because today the midah of Sfiras Omer today is Hoyd Shibiyusaid. Moshe Rabbeinu was granted Karnei Hoyd. It was a glowing. It was this developing, rising glow that came from Moshe Rabbeinu. That was Karnei Hoyd. That's what we are aiming for. The Rebbeinu Shalom is giving us the ability to grow, to expand, to see the destiny of the Jewish people unfolding. But it's just not yet. It's just near. So near the remez. Right. So Nir is a Hebrew, is a Israeli name today. People call their kids Nir. So Rashi in Bamidbar points out that Nir is Lashon Malchus va'ol memshalas ish. Nir is sovereignty. Okay. So he says, Zmichas Keren Yeshua, Shegdolehi chayva seinu liyasher es mesilasa. Our obligation is to straighten the pathway, to pave the road ahead. That's our job right now, right? This is Kivyachol. If you've ever seen somebody, creating people building a road. So in order to build a road, you start somewhere, and then you take the cart that's got the paving stones, and pull it over the road that you've just paved, right? You have to pave, and then you can pull the cart a little further, and then you take the stones off, and you put them on the next part of the road, and then you can pull the cart along, right? In order to finish the road, you need to finish the road. But once you've done it, now it's done. But he says that's our avodah right now. Our avodah is to both travel the road and pave it as we go. We're straightening that pathway, this very bumpy road. We're straightening it out. He says, "Livli tifga michshelim mitzad hamitzvos atluos ba'aretz kechol ha'efshari." in such a way that we are not going to encourage chas v'shalom or provide a stumbling block to transgress the mitzvahs that Eretz Yisrael requires, or that are required by living in the land of Israel. He says, our goal right now, and he's talking to Talmidei Chachamim, B'nai Torah, Rabbanim in Eretz Yisrael that are going to be reading this text, right? Shabbos Haaretz is not a kuntras that Rav Kook was publishing for the Chiloni farmers. Not that Rav Kook would ever use the word Chiloni, right? The Lubavitcher Rebbe writes that referring to a Jew as Chiloni is an Issa Deraisa. Biblical prohibition to call a Jew Chiloni. Why? Because the word Chiloni comes from the word Chol. And we're called Am Kadosh. We're Kadosh. The Jewish people is Kadosh. There's no way of making a Jew not Kadosh. You cannot get rid of Kedushas Yisrael. So that means that it's impossible for a Jew to be a Chiloni. Rav Kook refers to people that don't keep mitzvahs as Chofshiyim, people that have freed themselves, or that act free from mitzvahs. It's to that end that there were people that took umbrage with the lashon of Hatikva, liot am chofshi be'artzena, to be free. So, right, to be free. The goal was never to be free. So the goal of Klal Yisrael is right. So I had friends when I was in yeshiva that would that when they sang Hatikva, they would sing Lios Am Kodesh be'artzena. They changed the nusach. Right? I don't know if you need a Hataras Nadarim to change the nusach of Hatikva, but that's the goal. Lios Am Kodesh be'artzena, not to be chafshi. But okay, he says so. The goal is to ensure, he says to the Talmidei Chachamim in Eretz Yisrael, the Bnei Torah, the Bnei Yeshiva, the goal is to ensure that this Yishuv is keeping Torah mitzvahs as much as possible. So we're going to find kulas. We're going to find heterim, that these farmers that are being moisen nefesh, they don't even know what they're being moisen nefesh for, but their nefesh is screaming, it's time to be in Eretz Yisrael, you got to build up the land of Israel. They're eating ham and cheese sandwiches at Nil of Yom Kippur. Right? These are people that are not Shomer Torah mitzvahs. As much as we can possibly make it possible for them to keep Torah mitzvahs, we need to. Because we don't want michsholim mitzad ha-mitzvahs atluis ba'aretz. We don't want to ruin this thing that we are, this nascent proto-Medinas Yisrael. We don't want to destroy that by people not keeping Torah mitzvahs. So we, the Bnei Torah, have to figure out ways to help them. He says, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not a taskmaster. He's not a slave driver. The Rebbeinu Shalom loves Klal Yisrael. He wants Klal Yisrael to be able to be Avdei Hashem in such a way that it's not going to ruin our lives. He's not looking to ruin our lives. That's not the goal. Now, yeah, tyranny. The Rebbeinu Shalom, he doesn't want to make our lives miserable. Now, this is an important principle in halacha in general, and sometimes parents have a hard time with kids, grandparents with grandkids, right? You see a kid that's doing A, B, C, and D. You want to yell at them and tell them, you're doing the wrong thing. Then you have to figure out, well, how wrong is the thing that they're doing, right? Is there a way of being matter this thing? And then you have to figure out, is it worth being matter this? And what happens if you do? And what happens as a result of that, right? Meaning the halacha is broad. And there's various approaches to take to every question, right? You call up the rabbi on Erev Shabbos and you say to him, Rabbi, I have a milchik spoon in my hand and I have a fleshik pot. Is it okay for me to put the milchik spoon into the fleshik pot? Right? I'm going to stir the chicken soup with the milchik spoon. So the rabbi is going to say to you, no, that's obviously not correct. You call up the rabbi and you say, look, I'm an idiot. My wife told me go and stir the chicken soup and I took the wrong spoon and I put it in the wrong pot and I've stirred it. Did I trafe up the chicken? Well, okay, that's a different question altogether, right? That's a totally different question. It's not a question of lechatchila, should I go and do it? Yeah, obviously you shouldn't. Lechatchila, you shouldn't do. But the question is now, okay, now that we're in the situation that we didn't plan on being in, what do we do now? So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Trunya Ima B'Riyosah, the Rebbeinu Shalom is not a tyrant. He doesn't want to ruin your life. Meaning, lechatchila, we should always be Avdei Hashem and Yerei Shamayim. But lechatchila, we also shouldn't have been exiled from Eretz Yisrael. And lechatchila, we shouldn't have had a churban. And lechatchila, we shouldn't have had, Crusades and a Spanish Inquisition and the Holocaust, we shouldn't have had any of those things. Lichatchila, right? Lichatchila, none of that should have happened. Lichatchila, Adam and Chava shouldn't have eaten from the Eitz Hadas Tevera. Lichatchila, we shouldn't have had an Egel Azahav, and Lichatchila, we shouldn't have had Meraglim. The question is, okay, now that we did, now what happens? What'd you say? Correct. So that's Rav Kook's point here. He's saying, please understand, he's saying, Rabbi Say, understand. I've just spent the last, 7 pieces of Rav Kook that we've spent the whole year learning, explaining to you the godless of Shemitah and Yovel. It's like, you understand, he could never make this point without the previous 7 chapters, right? Saying how great Shemitah and Yovel is. He's saying, okay, now that we know what it should be, now let's talk about how we get there, because we're not there now. That's his point. We are not there now, yeah. We are not there. He says, however, V'chol hanemar lehakel b'makom mitzvah derabim. Chazal have a principle, brachos mem zayin mem beis, that's mitzvah derabim shani, that whenever you have a mitzvah of a large group of people, we can apply certain leniencies. This is the famous Gemara of freeing the Eved to make a minyan. Right? Mitzvah derabim shani, the mitzvah of the majority. Mitzvah of majority is different. Rav Soloveitchik said on that point, it seems to be because davening with a minyan is not a mitzvah deraisa, and it's not even a mitzvah derabbanan. It's a minhag. It's a minhag klal Yisrael to daven with a minyan. La'olam b'hem ta'avodu, which is last week's parsha. La'olam b'hem ta'avodu, not freeing an Eved Kanani is an issa deraisa. So Rav Soloveitchik says apparently what the Gemara is telling you is that the issur doesn't exist. The Rebbeinu Shalom didn't say this issur when there's a mitzvah of a majority of people that we're concerned with. Meaning, when Klal Yisrael needs something, this issur doesn't exist. It's not there, which is a phenomenal chiddush. But that notwithstanding, we have principles, says Rav Kook, of lakel b'makom mitzvah derabim. We are lenient when it comes to mitzvah of a large group of people. B'makom hefsed meruba, and we certainly have principles that hefsed meruba lo yichashu, that Chazal didn't make gezeres when it came to losing a lot of money, which is the Gemara in Pesachim and a whole bunch of other places. And in pressing situations, shasad chak k'di'evedami we paskin, right? That's the Gemara in Shabbos and the Gemara in Sukkah, that whenever you have a shasad chak, whenever you have a pressing situation, so we have leniencies that we can apply. All of these things. Says Rav Kook, this is our world right now. We're not living in a lechatchila world. We're living very much in a shasad chak k'di'evedami world. We're living in a world where there's a very weak issue in Israel. We need to figure out how to help Jews. He says, all of these things are joining forces together. All of these principles in halacha are coming together here. He says, he says, we've never had all of the confluence of all of these things coming together like we have in this question right now. Mitzvah derabim, lots of Jews involved. There's a hefsed meruba, people are going to lose a tremendous amount of money. It's a shasad chak. All of this is b'diavad. This is a pressing situation. He says all of these factors, it's like ducks in a row. If there was ever a time to find a leniency, says Rav Kook, you got to find it here. Why is he making all of these arguments? Because he's saying, I'm not being mechadesh anything. What I'm sharing here, says Rav Kook, is not a chiddush. This is all Gemaras. This is all Shulchan Aruch. This is all Rambams. I'm not saying anything brand new here, says Rav Kook, at all. At all. Throughout the entirety of Galus, there's never been a question that has had all of these factors so clearly delineated. Rav Kook was Yodea Sefer, of course. Right? If he's saying that in 2,000 years of Galus, we haven't had a question like this, where all of these factors line up, he knows what he's talking about. There isn't such a question where you need to find a leniency for a significant percentage of Klal Yisrael, a large group of Jews, where there's such a loss of money, where there's such a pressing need. He says, and none of this requires Rav Kook's philosophy in order to understand. He says, "Aval lamrois hafkas hamitzvah asher b'hira sha'azu." And you read the pain that he says these words with. He says, however, despite the hafkas hamitzvah, the throwing away of this mitzvah, it's mufka. We're throwing away this mitzvah. When you write the Heter Mechira, what you're doing is you are throwing away the mitzvah of Shemitah. You are finding a way around it, that it's as if, which is true. You speak to Israeli farmers now that sign a Heter Mechira, it's the same as like the Mechiras Chametz, right? Now, we all do Mechiras Chametz. I mean, there's those that are makbid not, but practically speaking, Mechiras Chametz, what do you do with Mechiras Chametz? Torah says, don't own Chametz on Pesach. So what do? You lock it in a cabinet, you sign a piece of paper, and then by the end of Pesach, it's yours again. Okay, but say that. Right? It's as if you didn't have to get rid of it. Now, it's mutter. It's mutter. It is the letter of the law, certainly not the spirit of the law. And Rav Kook spent the last year teaching us that we're aiming for a spirit of the law in a very deep and profound way. We are destroying this mitzvah. This is a churban of the mitzvah of Shemitah. Rav Kook owns that. He recognizes it, he understands it. There's a hafkas ha-mitzvah sheba harasha azu. Yeshnam kama gufei halachas hanidroshim lishmar v'la'asos b'pal. He says, however, despite the fact that we are absolutely destroying this mitzvah, there are real things that we still need to do. Practical gufei halachas that we have to do, hanidroshim lishmar v'la'asos b'pal, that we are still required to do in a practical way. He says, Gam nimtzayin yorei Hashem acharidim el dvarei me'od. There are those people that are yorei shamayim, that fear the word of Hashem in a very real way. This is from the pasuk in Yeshaya. He says, Hashem mipnei kedushas chibas hamitzvos hatulis ba'aretz mitzvos hashvis she'enei kol shel nesus lekiyuma ba'aretz chemda einam chasim al hefsed v'torach v'hen nechonim lekayma b'chol koyach kedin v'cham mishpat. He says, there are Jews that are keeping Shemitah. There are Jews that are not going to rely on my Heter Mechira. There are Jews that are going to say, I'm going to take the hit. I'm going to suffer the financial loss. I'm not going to sign up for this Heter Mechira. I want to keep the mitzvah of Shemitah. He says, Bruchim yiru la'Hashem la'amai. Those people should get the greatest bracha of Hashem and the Jewish people. He says, we need a Heter Mechira. There's a lot of Jews that are not. If we didn't give them a Heter Mechira, they're going to farm the land anyway. They need a Heter Mechira. And then there are Jews that wish that they didn't have to rely on a Heter Mechira. But they're not going to have food to eat. It's going to be sakanas nefashos. They're going to starve. Their businesses are going to collapse. The yeshiva is going to fall apart. You can't do it to them. However, there are Jews that are saying we're going to take the hit. We're going to take the hit. Bruchim yiu la'Hashem la'amai, the greatest thing in the world. For these Jews that are keeping Shemitah. He says, "Ulevad zeh," but despite whether you were gonna keep Shemitah and now a Heter Mechira allows you to sell the land and work the land, or whether you weren't gonna keep Shemitah, and the Heter Mechira is gonna make sure that you're not over on a mitzvah, or now that you have the Heter Mechira, you'll be able to survive, whatever it is. Says the more that you learn, the more that you'll keep. The more that we teach and that we learn, and the more that we disseminate Hilchos Shemitah, the more people are going to be engaged in the mitzvahs of Shemitah. It's going to be engraved and burrow into the hearts and souls of Jews. And from Shemitah to Shemitah, we are going to add. We're going to add more and more Jews. More and more Jews coming to Eretz Yisrael. And more Jews are going to be Shomer Torah mitzvahs. And more Jews that are going to be holding the mitzvah of Shemitah. Asher ba'oiz Hashem bilvavam yarchivu es gevul hamitzvah b'chol harchavasa uprateha. That with the strength of Hashem ignited in their hearts, they are going to expand the borders. They're going to stretch out the borders of the mitzvah into all of its domains, in all of its depth and breadth and details. Yeah.
When he talks about the possibility of cross a mitzvah in the time of need and so on, in the practical matter, what would he mean? That farmers could continue to farm?
Yeah.
Or
they're going to sign a Heter Mechira
from a farm that's not.
All of it. Meaning, when you sign a Heter Mechira, you can now farm the land. It's not your land. You keep farming the land. You sell it to, some British police officer in Eretz Yisrael. He owns the land. You work it. There's no Isser. It's not Jewish-owned land in Eretz Yisrael. There's no Isser of working that land. It's not Jewish owned. A Jew can work on land that belongs to Nachri in Eretz Yisrael. He says that's the Havkas mitzvah. We've thrown away the mitzvah, meaning you're not observing it, you're not violating it. You've gotten rid of that mitzvah. Now that's a terrible situation to be in. You never want to put yourself in a situation to not keep a mitzvah. Meaning that doesn't mean that it's ba'onis.
No, I was just thinking in a very practical way. In other words, I thought the law of Shemitah was that you're not allowed to plant or work the soil,
Right,
or harvest, and also that the land itself
has to rest.
should be allowed.
But that's only if it's your land.
Sell to someone, you're buying produce on land in Israel that was not left.
Right, but there's no obligation to leave land fallow if it doesn't belong to you. But there's something very, very sad about having the opportunity to do a mitzvah and not doing it. Not for now, but take a look at Bamidbar Perek Tes, the halachas of with the Torah describes the halachas of Pesach Sheni, Pesach Ba'alaischa. So there was part of the Kriyas Torah that we learned on Pesach. So right, so we're a few weeks away from it in Yontif learning, and almost a full year away from it in the learning of the Torah. But there's a Rashi makes the point of why the Torah tells the story of Pesach Sheni after Perek Aleph, which is the source for Ein Mukdam Muchabat Torah. Take a look at the Gur Ari of the Maharel there. The Gur Ari of the Maharel makes the point that putting yourself in a situation that you cannot observe a mitzvah, even though you are now potter from that mitzvah, is a denigrating thing all by itself. For example, a person that on Erev Pesach would go to a cemetery. So now you're a Tamei Meis. Is there an Isur of becoming Tamei? No. Not unless you're a Kohen. I'm not a Kohen. Is there an Isur for me to go to a cemetery a day before Pesach? No. Will that by definition mean that I cannot bring Korban Pesach? Yes. So have I done anything wrong? No. But that's a sad thing to do. Right? That's a terrible thing to do. Right. That's what he's speaking about. This is the Havkas mitzvah. It's Hufka. Yeah, there's no Shemitah anymore now. You've gotten rid of the obligation of Shemitah. He says, but the more that people learn, the more that they'll know, and the more that they'll know, the more that they'll understand, the more that they'll understand, the more that they'll feel this deep desire to keep the mitzvahs of Shemitah. He says, Bahar HaKodesh HaOiz VaHa'atzumais Asher L'Am Hashem. The mountain of Hashem, there'll be this strength, this power and strengthening for the nation of Hashem. And the more that people do this, you'll see the trajectory trends upwards. That's been the theme of this whole kuntres. We get better and better with time. It's going to get better. It's going to get stronger. It's going to get greater. We're going to achieve this. You'll see, says Rav Kook, if you learn what I'm saying, if you understand what I'm saying, people are going to want to keep Shemitah. And we have to enable a very weak observance of it now, which is just don't violate it. Right? Don't violate it. We'll have a Heter Mechira, but temporary. You'll see people are going to keep Shemitah. May Ruach Hashem achayfeif al amay ve'aratzai teichel kedusha Shemitah v'tifer ziv k'vayda lis pashet al kol ruach v'nafesh. From that inspiration of Hashem that is chafif al amo, that is hovering just above us, our people and our land, you'll see it will begin. The kedushas Shemitah and the tiferes ziv k'vayda, that glorious, glowing honor of the Jewish people, is going to begin to expand into every soul and body. L'chol am Hashem, every person within the nation of Hashem, v'yichud, and especially liyoshvim b'tzel kodesh shel eretz chemda, those that are in the shadow of this beautiful, desirous, amazing land. B'neimas yedidus oiz ahavasa, with the sweetness and the love of the strength of the dearness and the passion for Eretz Yisrael, people are going to feel it. And once that fire is lit and the coals have been stoked inside of the hearts and minds of the Jewish people, he says it's going to keep going. It says, "V'ruach kedushas hayovel hamistater yofia me'otzer kadshay shel al kedushas hashmita." And then eventually, the kedusha of Yovel, which is so hidden, by definition, is hidden. It is that which is latent within latent, that which is hidden within hidden, that latent potential of the Jewish people, which is to be an Am Hashem, to be an Or Lagoyim, to be transformative as a national existence, grassroots movement, bringing humanity to its goals and fruitions of Naseh Adam B'Tzalmenu Kid Musenu, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted humanity to be. All of that will begin to evolve and express itself within the Jewish people. La'orer Keren Yeshua, to reawaken the horn of salvation, V'kol Shofar L'Sagev Yesha, and that sound of the shofar, which is going to announce our salvation, that's the sound of the shofar of Yovel, as we pointed out, the shofar of Yovel that heralds in the Shnas HaYovel, La'orer Yeshenim, that reawakens those who are sleeping, La'orer La'odeid Geulim, and to prepare us for our redemption. That's the goal here. So he says, I'm about to give you a Heter Mechira. I wish I didn't have to.
Who was he addressing this to? Were they from farmers?
They were from farmers, but there were also lots of from Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Not lots. He's talking to the Yishuv that's in Yafo and the Yishuv that's in Yerushalayim. Those are the Chevra that he's speaking to. Be'ez Hashem, next week we will wrap up with the end of this kuntrus. And then you have the whole of the halachas of Shabbos Aretz to learn. So please God, by that time we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. It should be a beautiful day. Enjoy.